Hello everybody, Sarah McVicker back with you for the last video in the series of 8 that are covering some of the topics that will be included in my Trauma Talks workshop in the fall 2020. I'm expecting my cousin Lighthouse Mary to visit with some more questions.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi Mary, how are
I'm
you?
good. How are you?
I'm great.
I'm back again for our last video, and let's have a last cup of tea together.
Okay, I'm way ahead of you here, Mary. Always ready with the tea.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Hot enough for you?
Very nice.
It is good. Okay. What would
So-
you like to know today?
Well, I want to bring up Alcoholics Anonymous again.
Okay.
We talked a little bit about that in the last video, because I feel that a lot of people, and myself included, think that Alcoholics Anonymous is a religious organization. And is that true in your view?
No, it's not a religious organization as such, but I can understand how it got to be perceived that way. Alcoholics Anonymous began in the 1930s by a couple of fellows who were Christians, and because they believed at the time, and still would if they were with us, they believed that people are more successful in getting sober if they have a relationship with a higher power or a power greater than themselves. Because these men were Christian, they probably chose God as their higher power, which many people do. But that is not to say that that's everyone in AA. But you can see from that, the perception back then would have been that if you saw God in the literature or references to Christianity in the literature, that you would tend to think that it was a religious organization.
Yes.
But really it's not.
Yes. And I see that, and you explained that really well, Sarah.
Thanks.
It's a little clearer to me now. But it is very religious for some.
Yes, and I think that that has to do with the fact that when people get sober, they might have had an absence from having any relationship whatsoever with past beliefs or practices to do with religion. And when people find sobriety and a new life, pretty much, many people will go back to past practices that they might have had, whether that be church going or talking about their belief in God or whatever higher power. So yeah, I can see why people would still, even to this day, hear about those references in an AA meeting and outside of AA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did your life begin to change, Sarah?
Oh yeah, my life began to change. Yeah, it started to change, number one.
A nicer change.
Yes. It started to change in the waking up in the morning feeling healthy, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first gift of sobriety that everybody would admit to, that there's nothing that can beat waking up in the morning and feeling well.
Yes.
And yeah, so that was the first one.
Yeah. What practices did you need to change in your life to truly feel you were on a healing journey?
Well, for me, the first practice was continuing to read, whether it was AA literature or other literature that would help me progress forward.
Yes, and you're a reader for sure. I know that, and
Yeah.
so am I. Anything else?
Yeah, there was, I suppose, many things during the course of the years, but what stands out would be, I suppose, the crux, really, of healing from alcoholism or anything else, for that matter, trauma included, is that a person has to be willing to have a very honest look at themselves. And yeah, there's a lot involved in that.
Yeah, what sorts of things?
Well, everybody is different, but again, I'll speak for myself. Some of my own things were I had no trust in people, and that came from the childhood terror of other people. I never learned to trust people. I judged others as I got older. I depended on my own take on the world, and for a lot of those years, I thought my take was the only take, and I didn't really, in not trusting others, I judged others.
Right.
Besides that, I felt inept in a lot of ways, and I really didn't know if I really was or if I wasn't. So I wanted to look at why I felt that way. I felt less than other people. I also felt, as many alcoholics do, as well as traumatized people, that I felt the world was out to get me. And I had to figure out if indeed I was contributing to that, if there was something about that that was not true. I needed to look at whether I was as honest as I like to think I was. And oftentimes we, pat ourselves on the back for things that might not be completely accurate. So I needed to really know if I sometimes took myself off the hook and tried to put somebody else on the hook for
Yes.
my own foibles or whatever. So yeah, that's a big thing. It requires a really thorough moral inventory to heal. You had to get to the bottom of who you actually are.
And there's nothing easy about that.
No, there's not. But it's certainly necessary on this road. And also, I was an ongoing member of AA once I started, and those meetings, lots of things were aired that were learning points for me. And I continued with, besides the reading, I continued with my professional help. I realized long ago at the beginning of AA that AA was not going to take care of 100% of a traumatized life as far as I was concerned. Yeah. I needed other help.
Yes.
And I was, very, I was very diligent about seeking that out, as we talked another day. It wasn't, everybody I met was not a fit, but I certainly worked hard at trying to find those who were. One thing we all learn eventually is that nobody can go it alone. You have to have some kind of support, be it AA, be it with a professional, with someone if you're going through those kinds of serious traumatic events in life. Yeah.
What begins to happen during that work?
Oh, it's there's so many things begin to happen, but I guess one of the huge things, Mary, and I'm sure that everybody to some degree has experienced this, we are very, very seldom the horrible people that we think we are. Whatever we have, whatever negative views we had of ourselves are often unfounded. They're often, when you take that thorough inventory of yourself and you start to really look at, was I really this, or was there something contributing to my thinking that made me feel that way? Remember, in childhood emotional trauma, one of the biggest points in that is that you don't have that relationship with learning that you ordinarily would have with a parent if you were in a family where you were learning through parents all of the things about yourself that a child needs to have.
Yes.
To develop self-love, to develop confidence, all of those things. If you don't have that in childhood, you start substituting into your little tank all kinds of things that might not be true. It's a child view of what you think you are. And if you're not hearing the positive things, well, guess what most of us are going to replace them with? You're going to put the childlike negative views in that little tank, and you're going to fill yourself up with that until you learn differently. Right. So you have to be able to take that inventory. And also I had, through the reading and the professional help and everything, you start to ask the adult questions. You start to realize that, why did I think that? Well, probably because you were a child.
Yes.
And that's what you were dreaming up as being the reasons for things. So yeah, my life started to change a lot.
So is the work done once we recognize these things?
You don't have to ask that question, do you? We're both laughing. No, but you know what? It's a good question. And you know
Yeah.
why it's a good question, don't you? Because most of us want to stop our professional help or whatever we're doing the minute we identify the problem.
Yes.
We think that's the end. Oh, that's what's wrong with me. So now I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Well, the opposite is true. The minute you
Of course.
find out what's wrong, that's when the work begins. Yeah. So, for me, I'll give a couple of examples in healing that were actual strategies that we have to learn, whether it's from a professional or AA or wherever you're taking your information from. For me, one of the things, a huge thing for me, was a fear of people. I was terrified of people, and that didn't stop when I was an adult. I found it from a child age, a very young age, that I had a very difficult time holding someone's eye. I had a very hard time looking people in the eye when I spoke to them. And that was learned in childhood through fear and lack of security and lack of confidence and so on. So my strategy for that was I became aware of trying to do that when I spoke to another person, to hold eye contact as long as I possibly could, and until it became unnatural. And then I continued to be aware of trying to do that. The other thing I did to try to help me with my fear of people was to initiate a conversation, or a greeting at least, with a stranger once a week.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had it in my mind that I was going to do this every time I went out, at least once a week, whether it was on the bus or whether it was a salesperson or someone that I'm passing by. It didn't matter what the topic was, to make myself talk to somebody I didn't know and to hold eye contact. And even if it was just a couple of minutes, it's something that builds. These things get better as you
Yes.
do them. Yeah, I didn't like myself very much, and I was in AA for a very long time before that started to change. And one of the things that I did that was crucial for me, because of the huge dislike I had of myself, is I was online, I was reading, I was trying to find places where I could find help with this. I came across a lady by the name, you might be familiar with, Louise Hay, who has a website now where there's a lot of wonderful things on that website. But one of the things Louise Hay teaches is called mirror work. And you talk about hard to do for the first while. It is reaffirming the good things about yourself and telling yourself that you love these things about yourself every day
Mm-hmm.
in a mirror. And for the first while, it felt so ridiculous, but I made myself do it. And it even went so far as suggesting, besides the affirmations, it suggested that you give yourself a hug every day and tell yourself that I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I love you, Sarah McVicker, you're a good person. It is unbelievable how, after a period of time, those things will start to grow as being something more easy to do. And it becomes something that you can call self-compassion,
Yes.
where you can look in the mirror and say, I knew these things about myself, I felt this way about myself, and now I am looking at myself in a different way because I found out that those were many childhood views that I had that were simply not true.
Right.
And you do that enough, and those are only examples, just a few examples of the many things that I had done. I also, my higher power is Jesus. I have conversations with Jesus all the time. And one of the things that I ask for, and this is a spiritual thing for me, it's not a church-going thing, it's a thing in my heart, where I ask for increased faith. It's the kind of thing that I need in order to give me hope that I'm on the path that I want to be to improve my life. And in the self-compassion that gets developed with those strategies, and with that self-forgiveness of the things that you really weren't guilty of in the first place, all of these things add up eventually. Those are two of the hugest things that go toward self-love.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Self-compassion and self-forgiveness are really two of the most huge things that you can do for yourself. Yes. Before you can start to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So those are strategies that worked for me, and I wish you the same if it's something that you would like to try.
And is our time in our last video coming to an end, or do you have anything more to say? I think so,
Mary. I think that we're, when you actively start to help yourself, things come your way, doors start to open, and an increase in faith helped me to believe that all of those things I believed about myself, where I didn't feel good enough at this and I didn't feel enough of that, they're fictional, but you don't know that until you get to a place where you're healed enough to recognize it. And it takes the work that we talked about.
Yes.
From when I identified the fact that I was under some sort of a trauma in my whole life, where I was in my 60s before I realized that I can do something about these things. And for me, and I'm not implying that this is everybody's road, because it isn't. But stopping drinking was the beginning of that. Yes. For me. And only when my mind was clear, only when I was consistently clear and my brain was firing correctly again, was I able to start doing some things to help me to start to love myself. So that's pretty much where healing brought me to, and healing doesn't end, it's ongoing. You continue to work on these things, and it gets better and better and easier and easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Shall we leave it there then?
Yes.
And
yes.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been very informative for me, and I think for many other people that will hopefully see these videos.
Yes, and thank you for helping me with them.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
I'm going to set out now.
All right,
Thanks
Mary.
again.
All right. Thanks for arriving.